10 super cool abandoned military projects from militias around the world. 10. The Russian Woodpecker. The massive antenna created by the Soviet Union often led to theories and rumors of the Soviet Union having mind control or weather control through the enormous metal device. While the Soviet Union had communication systems that were able to perform within the line of sight, they had yet to create a communication system that was considered an over-the-horizon radar system. That is, until 1976, when they designed the Steelyard, otherwise known as the Russian Woodpecker. At some point during 1976, amateur and professional radio stations started picking up an extremely powerful broadcast in the shortwave radio bands. The noise would appear without warning and would sound like a sharp, repetitive tapping noise, which ultimately led to the nickname, the Russian Woodpecker. The annoying sound eventually ceased in 1989, and although the reasons for the eventual shutdown were never exposed, most people have come to their own conclusions. Some believe the signal stopped because the change of balance at the end of the Cold War, and because the installation in the Russian Far East was taken off of combat duty the same year the noise stopped, meaning most of the equipment located there had been scrapped. Another popular theory is that technology simply became null and void after the success of the USKS early warning satellites, which had by this time grown into an entire network. Regardless of what really happened, the huge metal structure has been abandoned as a military project and is used now by amateur radio personnel. 9. The Zelhava Underground Air Base. Being the largest underground military base in all of Europe, it's hard to believe that it was able to remain a secret for so long. Construction of the base began in 1948 and wasn't fully completed until 1968, and the total cost for the project after its completion was an astounding $6 billion, more than 3 times the amount of the combined military budgets of both Serbia and Croatia. The base was created to establish a nationwide early warning radar network and was made to be able to withstand a direct hit from a 20-kiloton nuclear bomb. During the Yugoslav wars, the base was well used, but as the war ended and the Yugoslav People's Army withdrew from the area, they proceeded to destroy the base as to prevent other opposing forces from taking control. The destruction of the site ended in 1992. Due to the toll of the destruction left at the site as well as the lack of financial resources, the area remains unused and abandoned today. An international border cuts the land in 2 sections, but the land itself remains riddled with active mines and ammunition, leaving it pretty much useless. 8. Project Z. Project Z, also known as the Z Bombers Project, was a secret military project later abandoned by the Empire of Japan. The project, which is similar to the Nazi German America Bomber Project, was a specialized aircraft bomber design that was supposed to be able to reach the United States. The plane was supposed to have 6 engines, each having 5,000 horsepower apiece. Even though an immense amount of work had gone into designing and creating the intercontinental bomber capable of reaching North America, Project Z was abandoned due to the project's complexity. It simply wasn't worth it, so Project Z was cancelled in July of 1944. 7. The Australian Light Destroyer Project. The goal of the Australian Light Destroyer Project was to design and build a class of small destroyers for the Royal Australian Navy. When the project began in 1966, the first destroyers created were used to support and protect the patrol boat operations. In 1969, the Australian Navy decided to use the small destroyers to replace some of their older, now retired models. Due to the replacement, the ships began to increase in size and complexity. However, due to rising concerns over things like the ship's cost and the technological risk, the Australian government cancelled the rest of the project in 1973. Later, their government decided to use a version of the United States Oliver Hazard Perry class ship instead. 6. The Johnston Atoll. It may now serve as a territory governed by the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, but prior to that, it served as a multitude of things for the United States military. For 70 years, the area was under the control of the United States military, and during that time, it underwent many changes. At times, it was used as a bird sanctuary, a naval refueling port, an air base, an area for space recovery, a space for nuclear and biological weapons testing, as a secret missile base, and as an Agent Orange storage site. The atoll sits in the North Pacific Ocean, a little less than 900 miles southwest of the Hawaiian Islands. Even though the spot of land was first discovered in September of 1796, the name Johnston wasn't given until after Captain Charles Johnston sighted the land in December of 1807. In 1934, President Franklin D. Roosevelt gave an executive order order which transferred the control of the Johnston Atoll to the United States Navy. After years of destroying chemical waste and such at the site, the jurisdiction of the island was turned over to the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, and in 2003, some of the last military buildings were torn down, and the Johnston Atoll became part of the Pacific Remote Islands Marine National Monument. 5. Flak Towers. The flak towers are symbols of a Nazi era that just won't seem to go away. During World War II, Hitler designed and created these towers as an answer to the Allied air attacks. The megastructures were designed to withstand incoming aircraft missiles and falling bombs. Because of their close proximity to densely populated urban areas and the sheer amount of explosives it would take to eradicate the building, these towers proved to be difficult to get rid of. Originally, Hitler and his staff designed and planned 3 of these giant concrete complexes, some with walls over 11 feet thick, around Berlin, 3 more for Vienna, and 2 more for the port of Hamburg. Even faced with the serious issue of transporting the vast amount of supplies required to create just one of these mega castles, the Nazis still completed the 3 Berlin towers in a record 6 months. Even then, the Nazi Germany were faced with trying to transport enough ammunition to fully support flak towers. Despite all these difficulties, the towers proved to be a valuable asset. Not only did the guns firing from the top of the 7-story tower hit target from up to 8 miles away in every direction, but the tower itself acted as a bomb shelter and protected thousands of Berlin citizens. For the most part, the towers were abandoned after the war's end, even though some of the troops within had to be starved out before they surrendered. While the huge monuments of the Nazi era still loom over cities today, most are being repurposed into things like aquariums and garden plazas. Only one in Austria is still being used by the Austrian military. 4. Project Babylon. Project Babylon was commissioned by Saddam Hussein when he was the Iraq president. Although the project had secret objectives, the main idea was to build a series of superguns on research from Project HARP in the 1960s. Before having sections of the superguns confiscated, 2 superguns had been created and all but assembled. They were called Baby Babylon and Big Babylon. However, in April of 1990, several pieces of Big Babylon were confiscated by the United Kingdom Customs, and the project came to a halt. Soon after, more pieces were seized in Turkey and Greece, and even more pieces were confiscated at the manufacturer's site in Spain and Switzerland. After the 1991 Gulf War, Iraq admitted the existence of the project and later allowed the United Nations to come in and destroy the remaining hardware in Iraq. 3. The Canadair CL-84 aircraft. The tilt-wing monoplane you see in this picture is one of the 4 aircrafts that were actually made. Out of the 4 that were produced, only 3 of them ever made it to flight testing. The aircraft, dubbed Dynavert, was a plane created by the Canadair between 1964 and 1972 for its military jet. After manufacturing only 4 of them, the military project was cancelled. In the years prior to the aircraft's development, Canadair conducted thorough research in vertical takeoff and landing technology, as known as VTOL. The knowledge they gathered from 1957 to 1963 ultimately assisted the designers with the model debuted in 1964. The end of the Vietnam War meant that militaries around the world had to start scaling back on unnecessary military spending, including Canada. Once it became clear that Canada wasn't going to order any more of the CL-84s to go into production, Canadair began trying to sell the model to countries such as Germany, Holland, Italy, the United Kingdom, and Scandinavia, all of which turned the project down. 2. The Monsell Sea Forts. The Monsell Sea Forts were huge structures built in the Thames and Mersey estuaries during the Second Cold War to help defend the United Kingdom from German attacks. They were created to deter, report, and eliminate German air raids from using aircrafts to lay mines in the important shipping and trading channel. Although seen as successful, the forts were decommissioned in the 1950s, and by the 1960s, the towers were being used for other things, including pirate radio broadcasting. Over the last few decades, each of the 4 forts has either fallen into disrepair, been dismantled, or deemed uninhabitable, leaving the remaining military structures utterly abandoned. 1. The Greenbeer Bunker. The Greenbeer Bunker was a massive bunker hidden away under the famous Greenbeer Hotel. The bunker was a military project that was supposed to have been kept top secret until it was exposed by a reporter from the Washington Post in 1992. Beginning in the late 1950s, President Dwight Eisenhower started to worry about how to reestablish and maintain law and order in the United States after a nuclear war fallout. After contemplating his ideas for several years, the top secret Project Greek Island broke ground in 1958. The huge post-apocalyptic bunker was large enough to house both the House as well as the Congress and a few other government personnel in the event of a nuclear war. Thankfully, a nuclear war never happened, yet the bunker laid fully stocked and waiting for the next 30 years. Had it not been exposed in 1992, this would probably still have been the holding place for the House and Congress, but since its discovery, it has become a huge tourist attraction, showing the public what it would have looked like if the country's government had to run and seek shelter underground.